Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Amy James.
And I'm Devon James.
And this is your Web3 Weekly Wrap-up. Let's get into the week's news. It was a big week. Things I think are just going to be accelerating for the next little while, at least. It's exciting.
It certainly was a big week. Again, we will not have our little robot friend for this one. He's still in the shop. Let us know in the comments if you miss him, because I miss him personally. I'm not sure that Amy does. We'll see. But
we'll see. Maybe
we'll see him soon. Maybe
up,
in an
I'll feel
upgraded
differently.
form. We'll see. Yes, exactly. Anyway, let's dive into our first story. Some might accuse me of including this, even though it doesn't have any direct implication on Web3, but I would argue that it has applications on literally everything.
Right.
Certainly including Web3. So LK99. Hot news amongst some of the internet this week. It's a potential room temperature superconductor. The story around it has been incredibly interesting and entertaining. But the premise there is that it might be a new breakthrough in material science that enables something made from very basic elements to do something that you could practically define as magic. Like, it kind of breaks the rules of classical physics, and it allows for electricity to be conducted with zero resistance. And the applications do it at room temperature, because obviously superconductors do currently exist. Things like MRI machines are based on them, but one of the reasons that an MRI machine is so expensive is because it can only work in incredibly low temperatures or incredibly high pressure, or both. And this says we don't need the pressure or the low temperature. You can do it at room temperature and normal pressure, and that could change absolutely everything. People are calling it the floating rock, and this is just because of a particular phenomenon. That's where I was going with that. Is I don't know necessarily that it has anything to do with the floaty rock phenomenon that would lead to the hoverboard. It might, who knows? Because it's diamagnetism is weird. It's not the same thing as normal magnetism. So a lot of people look at it and they're like, well, it's a magnet, whatever. But it's very distinct and different. Like, have you ever seen one of those little tracks that they can float a superconductor around on? It's really different, and it makes people think about hoverboards. But more than that, there's an enormous amount of power that you would need to have on something very small if you're going to literally lift a 100 to 200 pound person and have them kind of float around on it. And so applications in regards to an enormous amount of power moving through something that wouldn't normally be able to handle it are kind of the most direct first order response or benefits of this. Battery technology, an enormous number of different realms. I highlighted a few here. So create those supersonic maglev trains, allow cargo ships to reduce fuel consumption and emissions, improve the performance of aircraft and other industrial vehicles. It would lead to a revolution in generation, transforming, and distribution of energy. And actually, someone had a little quote here. It's easily on par with the invention of the transistor. And the transistor was such a huge change from what came before it with the vacuum tube that a lot of people, literally, it's what convinced them to believe in conspiracy theories that we had to have claimed or reclaimed some alien technology because we couldn't possibly have invented the shift from the vacuum tube over to the transistor is so enormous. So if this is true, it's that degree of enormity. However, it might not be. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of caveats. This is actually one of the parts of the story that I find most interesting is the fact that it's all happening live over the web. Like it's cool. There's like a live tracker on Wikipedia, keeping track of all the different experiments, and people are literally discussing this over Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's like
and
we're the primary. I mean,
date.
I'm sure that there are offline conversations that would probably be considered even more primary, but it feels as though the primary conversation around this, at least for the news side of it, is happening on X in a quote unquote public space, and that's really been fun to watch.
It really has.
Yeah.
It really, really has. And some of the kind of personalities coming out of it, like the fact that one of the people that has claimed to have reproduced some parts of it is referred to as a Russian anime cat girl or something. I don't remember. And literally like I know because that's her avatar on Twitter. And she's super surly, you know, Soviet style scientist kind of thing that didn't have all the right materials. So she made them herself. And when she then put out a picture showing it levitating, people were like, why don't you put out videos? And why don't you explain more about why it worked? She like kind of came back with this kind of attitude. Like, you guys are so stupid. You should just do it yourself. Like, it's so easy to do. You should do it yourself. Don't demand more proof. Just try it yourself kind of thing. So it's really funny. The bit of personalities coming out there. But also, obviously, there's a lot of debate. Is this even real? Could this, you know, because it was very sloppily released. The scientists surrounding it haven't necessarily nailed the dialogue around it and the explanations. They can't even explain why it does certain things. And so it caused a lot of people to just say, like, nah, this is not real. However, we're starting to see some validation of it. Other labs around the world, there's a bunch of Chinese labs that spun up working on it, at least one US lab that spun up working on it, and a lot of individuals, literally because this is such basic materials, they're working on it in their home kitchen, which is really exciting.
That's so fun.
Yeah. So if it's true, wow, absolutely
right,
huge.
you got to put the if it's true asterisk by all comments surrounding this now.
But the pace at which this is going, it kind of feels like we could find out whether it's true. Like, we could get some legit validation of it from a national lab within a week. Like, it's kind of insane.
We'll see.
Maybe by next week we'll have news
God,
about
that would be exciting.
That would be kind of incredible.
There are so many, you know, we're in that kind of precipice time right now in terms of the cyclical nature of history.
Mm-hmm.
And we're facing a lot of seeming emergencies, and also seeing the solutions to those emergencies appear. And this one was unexpected, but also feels on par for the course that we're on.
It fits the amount of change that's happening.
It fits the amount of change that's happening, and it also fits sort of the urgent need, and it also fits in with the other changes that are happening in technology and information.
Yeah, I just want my hoverboard.
I do too.
I just want my hoverboard.
Totally.
So,
yeah.
We'll see. We'll
right.
see. Hopefully we'll have some good news to report on that very, very, very soon. Anyway, let's go to our next piece.
Okay. Hopping into Web2 news and the walled garden problems that are, you know, becoming more and more apparent all of the time. This one is actually seemingly a solution to the walled garden problem. I often talk about how Elon Musk buying Twitter is seen as a solution by a lot of people, but that just because you like him or you like the way that he is running the platform doesn't mean it's actually a solution, because it could change at any time. He could grow weary of it. He could grow bored and on to the next thing, and it could be owned by somebody else very quickly.
He could break bad, to be honest. Yeah.
He could. He's always struck me as one of those characters that you're not exactly sure which side he's on, right? It's kind of like if you're watching the movie of this whole time, we would only know if he's good or bad because of his soundtrack. You know? It's like he's like
one of our friends calls him his favorite supervillain.
Yeah, right. Where some of them are like more obviously in the good camp or the bad camp. He's like, well,
you can't quite tell.
Quite tell, right?
I love that. Yeah.
But he's introduced some exciting new features for X this week. There are two of them that I'm going to highlight. One is that verified users can now download videos if the creator allows it.
That's
this
huge.
is something that really highlights one of the problems that we all experience in Web2 walled garden platforms, because they really try to prevent you from downloading for the most part. You know, if you want to download something from YouTube, you essentially have to go to a third-party app. I think you're probably breaking YouTube's terms of services in order to do so.
If you're the creator, you're not, but anyone else would be breaking their terms of service. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, and I often like to buy packages, informational packages, like workouts kind of stuff from creators, and they will really lock that down so that I can't actually download it onto my device and take it with me, and very annoying.
Use it later on when it's more beneficial to you. Yeah, that just seems janky, but yeah.
So unlocking this feature, super cool. The other one is a live video. I'm hoping at some point we'll be able to take this show live on Twitter, not just live on YouTube, because obviously crypto Twitter. Hey, everyone. That's where...
Crypto X.
Sorry.
Crypto X.
Sorry. I will get it. I will get it.
Oh, man.
Yes. So the live is exciting. We all saw them testing this feature a little while back when he just sort of randomly went live. For those who have been around for a while, you'll remember... No, it's not. It's in his other feed.
That's too bad.
You'll remember Periscope, which was essentially the live version that was on Twitter. Previously, that code had been deprecated and then was just turned back on. Now, I think it's been upgraded enough that they're now reintroducing the feature. Super cool.
Yeah. One thing we learned about it that was kind of unfortunate, because we literally thought, because this is live, I hope some of you are out there to be watching us live. It's a little bit of extra anxiety on our part to do it live. But since we decided this morning that we were going to do it live, and then this feature comes out, we're like, oh my God, should we do it on Twitter? But it only works on the phone for now.
Right.
There's no button on the desktop interface for doing so at all. But I assume, there's definitely, with a lot of these things, there's a push to do mobile first. I don't know why exactly, just because we do a lot of our computing on
I think a
on
lot
mobile.
of creators use their mobile devices, as their primary way of creating content. So that makes sense to me.
That's true. That's fair.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but I'm sure it'll come along soon. I'm sure they're not going to ignore the desktop, just because this works through OBS and it needs to get connected to the software so that it can push out. We can't possibly broadcast this from a phone. So there's the big creator economy that does this kind of thing, that has a similar setup, that would need that kind of support. And I would imagine that he's anxious to tap into that resource.
For sure. Yeah, I'm sure it'll expand from where it's at.
Yeah.
In other Web2 is on fire news, and leading into, Web3 as the solution news, it involves creators making money. So Patreon is the creator platform that is probably most well known from the Web2 era. It really kind of, in the way that like Kickstarter is the one that you talk to about crowdfunding, even though there are several others. Patreon is the one that you talk about for funding creators, even though there are others. It's kind of like the Kleenex or something of the crowdfunding for creators. And they have had repeated issues, right? I think that the founder of Patreon came to it with the best of intentions. He is an artist himself and really wanted to do right by creators. And I think that it's really just the limitations of the technology itself that has caused his platform and the nuances, and the liability of having a centralized platform that he has had to contend with on the legal side, that have also caused a lot of trouble for his platform. In this case, it seems to be about the infrastructure itself. And so I'll just read a little section of this tweet thread here, because this is what called my attention to it. It says, Patreon system appears to have totally collapsed. They sent me an email saying my credit card blocked the payment as fraudulent and canceled all of my creator support. And this is where it gets really dire, because when he goes, he's like so invested in trying to support the creators that he values that he went looking for his supported list of creators, and that list is gone. So now he's just having to try to remember who they are.
Oh,
and
man.
Then he does. He remembers who some of them are, right? And he goes to go and click to support them, the support this creator button, and he gets a 404 error. Like, what is happening, Patreon?
Wow.
What is happening? Here's an article about it. Why did I
one of the
suddenly
creators.
lose 300 patrons
Oof.
from the creator side? So now you're going to think about that from the creator side, right? Like, it's frustrating enough from the
so hard for
supporter
him to
side,
rebuild.
because you're just trying to, kind of like support things that you believe in, support artists. Like, that's so important. That's the Patreon name comes from, the patrons supporting artists forever, right? Okay, let's now think about it from the creator side, which is really what has my heart in this. Ouch. Because the thing that most people don't realize is that creators are, in the way that Web2 works, there's a really strong analogy with sharecropping. They don't own anything about what they're doing other than the immediate content that they're putting out and the immediate funds that they're receiving. They don't own their connection to their audience. They don't own the land on which they're broadcasting their content.
Even that list
they don't
of their audience itself.
Right.
Oy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they can't do anything to protect it. Like, this might be a technical issue on Patreon's fault that it's lost forever, and they could have protected their own list if they
Right. If they
had
so
the ability
the
to.
one way that people will argue back on this is that they'll say, well, creators can build an email list, and you'll hear that from people who are coaching creators is that it's really important for them to build their email list first and foremost because email is a protocol and you can't have a third-party intermediary stop a protocol. There's a whole other conversation we can have about the oligopoly that email has become because of things like spam and the ways that has then been solved. It's very, very sad. I talked about it on a recent podcast. Nonetheless, the most direct control creators can have at this moment in time is to have an email list. So if they did, they could potentially email all of their patrons and say, hey, something went wrong, please, re-sign up. But again, that kind of friction, right, is like you're definitely going to have some people fall off. Right? Absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
If you even were able to get all of your patrons to give you their email in the first place.
In the first place, you probably,
effort. Yeah.
right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So Patreon, in response to what sounds like a really very quite serious problem, your platform's on fire kind of problem, their answer is, we are aware of an issue regarding a slight increase of declined payments.
Oh, man.
We're actively investigating the situation and appreciate your patience while it's resolved.
Oh.
Right?
Patience, please.
So then there's some comments down underneath this tweet. And somebody says, you should refund the cut that you're taking this month. You're harming people, right? And your creators are going to lose ongoing revenue past this month. Why not give them a little extra bonus? What is it that they're taking? 10%, 30%, probably something in that range. The response from Patreon support: we sincerely understand your frustration, and we greatly appreciate your patience and understanding in this matter.
What understanding? I don't have any understanding.
Felt like I was listening to one of those like outgoing recordings on a phone, your time is valuable to us.
No,
We're currently
it's not.
experiencing a higher than anticipated call volume. Thank you for your patience. Like, it's so much bullshit,
Oh,
right?
man.
And,
Wow.
or like thoughts and prayers, right? Like, these people, the creators that depend on this revenue to have lunch and pay their rent, are not going to be able to do those things with Patreon's sincere understanding of their frustration and their appreciation for your patience, right? Just like you can't protect yourself with thoughts and prayers, you actually need to take personal responsibility for your protection. And so that really leads me kind of into the Web3 solutions, because what Web3 offers is personal sovereignty. It allows you to take personal control over the ownership of your content, over the distribution of your content, to have a direct relationship with the people who are supporting you, and to not have those intermediaries who can mess stuff up for you. And before I get to an example of that, I just want to highlight one other thing from, again, Mr. Musk and the platform X, because they are sort of attempting to solve this problem of creators getting paid as well, right? He said early on when he took over that they wouldn't take a cut of any of the subscription revenue for the first year, really just as a way to onboard people into the ecosystem to make it attractive. But then he realized that for a lot of people, this money matters a whole lot in their lives, even if it's just a few $100s, and that even taking 10% of that would hurt people unnecessarily. It was not enough money for him for the harm that it was causing to other people. And so he's now adjusted the policy so that even after the first 12 months where he won't be taking any revenue, they will only take 10% from creators once the payout exceeds $100,000.
That's awesome.
Which is cool, right?
Yeah.
And he even goes so far as to say that he's going to try to speak with Tim Cook at Apple to get them to adjust their policies because they are just absolutely notorious for having strict enforcement of the 30% cut that they require. So all cool. Like, I think that, you know, just personally, that the kinds of things that Elon is saying are pro-creator, are pro freedom of speech online, are, you know, headed in the direction that we all want to be headed. Yeah. The unfortunate part is that he continues to use Web 2 technology to depend on that and to talk smack about Web 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's really funny that the guy who is most kind of antagonistic publicly about Web 3 obviously embraces its ideals pretty or seems to, you know, again, he still could be the world's biggest supervillain as far as, you know, we're yet to find out. But so far, he sure seems to really echo all of its ideals.
The ethos. Like, so many of us are in Web3 because of the ethos of, you know, freedom, of personal responsibility. Right. And he seems to be indicating that he agrees with those things. Yeah. And yet he has yet to come around to supporting Web3.
But he supports Dogecoin.
Don't get me started.
I'm sorry, Doggy Coin. Or is it Dogecoin?
Hi, Mom. So the Web3 technology that I want to note here is that what Elon is highlighting by dictating the terms by which creators will be paid is that the power still lies only on one side of the equation. It still only lies with the platform provider, whether that's Patreon that has some serious issues with their tech stack that's serving up, you know, their platform, or whether it's with Twitter that is really working hard to fix the problems that they've had on their platform and to offer what they see as a fair deal to creators. They're still fully in charge, right? They're still essentially the landowner in the sharecropping analogy. And what's important now is with Web3, that Web3 offers is to distribute that power to both sides and to have a market between the creators and the platforms that are distributing them. And so the universal data license that was just introduced for Arweave is, here, I'll just read a quick snippet from it. The Universal Data License is a standard framework for digital content monetization on the permaweb. It allows creators to set their own terms for the usage of content that they upload to Arweave and for developers to permissionally license data in their apps. So what that means is that creators, when they publish content to the permaweb, they can set distribution terms along with that content. And this is where it gets so exciting, because right now as creators, we face a lot of issues in terms of trade-offs, right? We can maybe use a song that we really want that like makes the piece that we're making so much better. It's just the perfect music for it. But we don't know what kind of terms go along with that when we upload it to YouTube. Is it going to be something that they recognize? Are we going to have a copyright strike for it? Are things going to be taken down for it? Are they going to just automatically take all of our ad revenue, direct it to somebody else? It's just this like kind of like wild card that creators have to make a judgment call about what's important to them at the time. Is it more important to them to make money? Is it more important to them to have the piece just right? Are they willing to risk a potential strike to their account in order to try it out? And the Universal Data License, these types of Web3 offerings mean that creators can explicitly say how you can use their content. So it's not just, I'll give the platform a 10% cut for distributing on my behalf, but it's also things like, you can sample my content so long as I get X percentage. You can use it in this way. Here's some footage that I'm not using that I shot. Here, you know, you use it. Like, it's so exciting when it comes to being a creator that my favorite part about being a creator is collaborating with others, and this actually gives a path to do it. It makes it frictionless. It makes it so that we can do it in a way that has integrity, and that's been the part that's kind of like turned my stomach the entire time that we've been in this Web 2 era of just feeling confused about how to give proper attribution, how to collaborate, not steal, make money.
Right. Artists want to support other artists, actually. Right. And I especially like that just because of the nature of the technology, the aspects of that license can be attached to the piece of content. They call it atomically. And I love that. That's been part of the dream, you know.
Right. I mean, we've been talking about these ideas for almost 10 years now, and how this would happen. And here it is, you know, live actually happening. Yeah. Yes. Love it. So exciting.
Absolutely.
Go check it out. Publish something, set terms, because the more that's out there, the more that we can all do and work together.
Yep.
It'd be really cool.
Well, let's turning to our next story. I find this one absolutely hilarious, to be completely honest. There is a direct upside for some parts of the crypto industry, but let me just go through this story a little bit. Razzle Khan and husband guilty of $4.5 billion Bitcoin launder. This person's name is not actually Razzle Khan. This is a guy named Ilya Lichtenstein and his wife Heather Morgan, who many years ago, 7 years ago now, he hacked. Was it not BitFinex? It was What was the bit? It was BitFinex, yeah. So they hacked, there was like a $71 million hack. And then they've spent the last 7 years trying to hide that money and launder that money and bounce it around. And
I remember when this hack happened.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I mean, it was probably one of the biggest ones at the time, you know.
And they were caught quite a long time ago.
No, you must be thinking of someone. There's another couple that was caught, you know, not a while ago for doing some other kind of shady stuff. They were arrested in February of 22. So I guess that's a while ago. That's a year and a half ago.
Yeah, it was in crypto land.
Yeah, it's forever. So what I find especially funny about this is, so when you have, over the course of that time period, Bitcoin increased in value so much that it's now worth $4.5 billion. So they had a whole lot of Bitcoin that was worth an enormous amount of money, and they didn't want to draw attention to themselves as being the thieves that stole it.
Wait, so just to underscore the quantities here, when they stole the money, it was worth
$71 million.
$71 million, and now it is worth
$4.5 billion.
Dang.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
That's crypto, folks. That's Bitcoin, at least. So anyway, in order to not draw attention to themselves as criminals who had stolen a bunch of money, they needed to come up with kind of an alternate. They had this really convoluted scheme for how they would actually launder it and turn it into small amounts of money so that they can still buy expensive things and live a nice lifestyle, as you know, billionaires should. But they also had to then come up with an excuse for where is this money coming from, right? And so she came up with this idea to be this like weird rapper with the moniker Razzle Khan. I assume that's how you pronounce it. Wearing just goofy outfits, just ridiculousness, and shooting these really high production value music videos all around New York City.
I remember the videos.
Too ridiculous. Too absolutely ridiculous. And she called herself,
look them up, you'll have a good laugh.
A badass moneymaker and, quote, the Crocodile of Wall Street. Whatever that means. I don't even like, you know, obviously it's a play on the Wolf of Wall Street, but what does that even mean? The Crocodile of Wall Street. Yeah. So while trying to cover up her crimes, she comes up with this public persona. So that was, you know, a weird move in the first place. Mm-hmm. But honestly, that didn't get them caught. Like you would think that it might, but it, you know, there's enough goofy content creators in New York City that no one really batted an eye and just thought she was weird. Instead, it was the various mechanisms they were doing to actually try to launder the money. They were moving it in all different ways. They split it up into hundreds of different smaller wallets and stuff like that, and they try to move some over here and some over here. And it turns out, so the investigators worked with chain analysis, yeah. Which just kind of goes to prove the point of anyone that's talking about that Bitcoin is for money launderers or for thieves, like, really doesn't understand the technology. 'Cause
Totally,
they literally
I know.
used, like, actual data on the blockchain itself to unravel this whole thing.
I always say this, but it's like if only all thieves left,
Right.
a time-stamped cryptographic signature on their
Exactly,
crimes,
exactly.
right?
Because literally what they did is investigators, they somehow figured it out because they were buying a bunch of gift cards from like Walmart and then turning that into cryptocurrency and then, spending on that. And so they drew the connection and they found the connection to the buying the gift cards. And then they found that some of the purchases of the gift cards came from some of the proceeds from the hack. And thus they were able to figure out this isn't just small time thieving. This is someone that has stolen what is now worth, billions of dollars.
Wild.
But when they raided their apartment, they found literally hollowed out books used created to conceal mobile phones.
Oh my gosh.
Right? How hilarious is this?
So funny.
But here's the upside to the whole story. This is great. Because it was such a large theft at the time, in 2016, $71 million was a fairly large amount. And it came from BitFinex, and BitFinex couldn't possibly cover it immediately. So they literally had to force their users to take a haircut. They all lost 36% of their deposits.
Not your keys, not your coins.
Right, yeah. So by 2019, they had recouped everyone. They'd recouped most of those people, but some people decided to take equity in the firm in exchange instead. And now this $4.5 billion belongs to BitFinex because they had recouped everyone. So they recouped everyone in Bitcoin at the value that it was. So it was beneficial for them to try to pay people back as early as possible, kind of thing. Wow. But now, 3 years after they've finished recouping everyone and they finally get the money, or 4 years, they finally get the money, it's worth $4.5 billion, which means everyone that took equity is going to make bank.
Dang.
On that. So stoked about that. That was a fun little silver lining at the top, on top of the hilariousness of the story itself.
It's nice to see a good outcome like that too. I mean, in the world of crypto doom and gloom.
Indeed. Anyway, in our next one, we're going to have just a really short little touch on some AI news. We've already covered in a few past episodes a few different blockchains that have been working to integrate elements of ChatGPT or just kind of open AI functionality and GPT functionality itself. I like this one especially because one of the problems you have when you have kind of an open standard or something can exist in any different number of forms is it's kind of hard to find the on-ramp, the road, where everyone is. And so everyone building their own plugin themselves, if they have a big enough community, they'll be able to draw attention to it and people will look at it. ChatGPT itself got itself 100 million users within, whatever it was, a month or whatever. So plugins are a really smart way of, if you have developed functionality to connect to your protocol or your application or something like that, and come up with a plugin to go onto the ChatGPT plugin store, it's a really smart way for discovery of that functionality to happen in the first place. And Solana basically built exactly that. And what I especially like about this is it's an alternative to block explorers. Block explorers, for anyone that's used them, they can be incredibly valuable sources of information, but there's so much information, and a lot of that information needs to be presented in its kind of cryptographic forms as hashes and transaction IDs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and so they're
block
30 characters long
are one
and
of those
unintelligible.
things that are what is the word that I'm looking for? It's like gatekeeping by being
unintentional gatekeeping for sure. Yeah,
by being just excessively
so
nerdy,
confusing and nerdy, and exactly. You show someone exactly. If you're introducing someone new to Bitcoin and you send them a transaction, and then the way that you show how cool it is by taking to them a block to explore and show them how small the fee was, and this is your address and this is my address, they're gonna eyes are gonna glass over.
Yeah, you just failed.
All right, never mind. Then I don't want this Web3 thing.
Yeah.
But they are so far over the course of 10 years, almost 10 years, more the only way to really investigate a transaction and understand the fees involved, what the inputs involved, the other outputs, etc. This is a way better way of doing it. This is an example of someone literally just giving a transaction ID and saying what happened and it analyzes it and gives you back some actual useful data. I love that.
It's like an
awesome.
actual English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's
very cool.
The size of the token purchased was 1. The transaction was timestamped at such and such. I mean, it could even be better. They could say August 2nd at such and such a time. I love it. Honestly, That's just great. I'm not
Bravo.
a user of Solana itself, but
well done.
I like this particular approach, and I definitely hope that it is replicated by others. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to our crypto regulatory news.
Oh yes.
So this week, Coinbase moved to dismiss the SEC lawsuit against them, alleging that crypto falls out of regulators' oversight. So I particularly loved this argument that they made, so I just wanted to highlight it. They said that the SEC isn't claiming that there are investment contracts involved in the 13 tokens that they named as examples in the suit. They say, quote, "The transactions over Coinbase's platform and Prime are not and do not involve contractual undertakings to deliver future value reflecting the income, profits, or assets of a business. They are commodity sales, with the obligations on both sides discharged entirely the moment the digital token, is delivered in exchange for payment," end quote. So this is just like really, I think Coinbase is one of the best companies in the space. They are obviously a giant in the space. Brian Armstrong has shown just incredible leadership for the last 10 years and has really been an example of excellence, of setting a high standard and maintaining it. And therefore, the kinds of arguments that we're seeing from his legal team are the best arguments that we have seen in some of these cases so far. And the argument is essentially that, these are not securities. They're referencing the decision from the Ripple case. And it's just something that I'm excited to see happening, and also pushes the timeline of this case forward more quickly than we had expected. The SEC only has until October 3rd to file a response to this motion, and any amicus briefs to support Coinbase can be filed until August 11th, which is just
next week.
Right. So that could be interesting to see what comes of that. And on their earnings call yesterday, they signaled that they would be filing to dismiss the lawsuit, and their chief legal officer, Paul Grewell, said that Coinbase believed that it would win the case. So, this is just all very good news for the future of crypto, because we really need to blow some holes in the kind of frivolous lawsuits that we're seeing from the SEC, and get away from the regulation through enforcement model that has kind of just been harming the industry for the last several years, and really creating this kind of just like doom cloud over all of us, where at the same time we're starting to see action on the regulatory front in Congress, and hopefully that will produce some clear rules of the road so that the industry can really flourish.
I think it's really funny that you described Coinbase as like a leader in the space, because there was definitely a time there, especially amongst the cypherpunks, that
I know,
there was just nothing but hate, because they were the biggest ones. They'd raised an enormous amount of money. They're a centralized wallet, all this stuff. But of course, since then, they've changed that quite a bit. Like they've released, Coinbase Wallet is a non-custodial wallet, and they definitely have revealed that they are in alignment with the general ethos.
The ethos, absolutely.
And they're taking the fight, straight. They're leading the charge on the fight in a lot of ways, and that's fantastic.
Well, I don't want to see anybody persecuted, but I would rather see somebody who has the resources to fight back persecuted than the ones that don't.
Yeah.
And so far, we've mostly seen that. We've seen these little companies, these little projects that were very under-resourced to begin with.
And end up having to settle. And then the SEC wins by default. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Or just not being able to have great lawyers, not make great arguments. There's just been, it's been not a fair fight. And because Coinbase has now entered the arena by getting sued, they are at least able to put up a strong defense that could make some meaningful change for us. So, yeah.
Well, it's a good argument. It's a very good argument, and I think a lot of people agree with the general premise that these are a lot closer to commodities than securities, and thus we should really be reevaluating that assumption.
I mean, if you're going to be forced to take a position with just the current definitions, then these clearly are not securities. There's great arguments for why these are not securities. I would say that we actually need, sometimes new things do need new laws, and that this is one of those cases. And so it's not really, the best argument isn't really, are they securities or are they commodities? The best argument is, it's new technology. Yeah. We need some new laws here.
Stop trying to pretend like they fit into something old.
Right, because the technology itself gives you some information and some accountability that just simply could not exist in other forms of technology or businesses, et cetera. Right. And so the new laws need to reflect the capability of the technology.
Agreed. And actually, kind of to that end, we've got a pair of U.S. representatives that are basically telling Apple, hey, there is some amazing new technology that's coming out that can do some amazing things, and your absurd old thinking policies might be getting in its way. You referenced earlier how kind of infamous Apple is for how much they enforce their 30% thing, and this is another example of them doing exactly that. So this is Reps Bilirakis and Schakowsky have sent a letter to Apple basically saying, like, hey, we need to better understand some of your policies and your iOS App Store policies, and in regards to blockchain and NFTs and distributed ledger technologies, because you might be getting in the way of innovation and American technology leadership. So just a few little points that I highlighted here. They expressed their concern about Apple's walled garden policy's effect on the development of apps using these tools, which might harm innovation from American companies in this area. And we've seen this for years. I remember it was like 2013 or 2014, the very first time there was an app that someone created as an iOS app, and I think it was just a simple wallet. And it was, I don't remember if it was initially accepted and then Apple bounced it, or if they just dragged their feet on accepting it, or I don't know. I don't remember exactly what the controversy was, but kind of from the start, you could tell that they were against this technology. And I think it was I'm pretty sure that was even before they were making their 30% cut on, because they didn't open up their payment system to all of their App Store developers yet. But it's gotten just worse and worse since then, because now they allow some things on. Certainly, there's a lot of crypto wallets that are allowed in the App Store, block explorers, lots of other different types of things. But again, they're saying, like, any financial transaction that happens through an app on our App Store needs to be conducted on our rails, and thus we need to earn 30% from it.
Right. That's been the issue, I think, as I understand it, is the in-app purchases kind of things that are happening, on chain, basically off of the App Store, not using fiat payments, and therefore they aren't able to directly enforce that 30% cut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's usually come up with games. In the case of Epic Games was the big lawsuit that was happening for a long time, where Fortnite had something called V-Bucks. It was the game's official tokens. And I don't know if that was an actual blockchain-based thing. It wouldn't necessarily need to be if it's an in-game kind of a currency. But the point is, if it can be transacted inside of the game or really outside of Apple's payment rails on a blockchain, then Apple has no ability to enforce their 30% cut.
So their only recourse is to just kick them off of the App Store.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they just demand, hey, give us our 30%. And then this Coinbase wallet was rejected due to this issue, because they were, allowing for the exchange of NFTs and stuff like that. And they kicked them off saying, hey, we want our 30%. And Coinbase responds with, for anyone who understands how NFTs and blockchains work, this is not possible. Their proprietary in-app system doesn't actually support crypto, so we actually can't do that. I wonder if people's mood would change if Apple decided, if Apple Pay itself became basically, blockchain decentralized payment rails kind of thing, like they ran it on XRP or something, I don't know. And so then it would then become possible to capture that 30%. If it was running on some sort of distributed ledger technology, it would be possible. Would it be justifiable though? You know what I mean? Like that's part of the counter issue is that asking for 30% of every single transaction that happens across the board, it's like they very much sharecropping, like you were talking about.
I mean,
earlier.
I would take issue with saying that if you understand how it works, you would understand it's not possible. I would say you would understand it's not enforceable. And there's a huge difference there. It's certainly possible. It's just that it's not enforceable. And
well, it would require, because if the payment is happening over, let's say, if it's an NFT and it's happening over the Ethereum blockchain, there's no way for Apple to Apple has never given developers, this is my Ethereum wallet. So it can't happen within the technology itself. It would require developers to add a second payment. And if it's coming from someone's wallet, then that wallet would need to exchange into fiat, get deposited into someone's bank thing, and then so it's kind of not possible. Sure, you could add a lot of complexity to build it, but on both sides, it's kind of like it kind of reveals that Apple doesn't really understand this technology, or at least the policymakers and law and kind of legal folks there that keep on enforcing this don't actually understand how this stuff works.
Yeah.
It feels like I don't know.
It would be hard for me to believe that Apple doesn't understand the technology. Apple, the engineers and the executives, right?
Yeah.
However, it would certainly behoove them to play dumb.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In order to continue to enforce their 30%.
They seem to be playing dumb. This is how they actually announced their type blockchain rules in October. Apps. Hello.
No, you're all clicky.
You might not hear me, but it looks like it's going out, so I'm going to keep talking. Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Sorry. Hopefully there's audio because we're just wrapping this up still.
Yeah.
So apps may not use their own mechanisms to unlock content or functionality, including crypto and NFTs. So it's just kind of like, it's a little bit insanely cumbersome. They're basically just saying, even though it's now technically possible to do this kind of a thing within your own software, we won't allow that. And so they very much are getting in the way of innovation. They're like, we're super happy about the amount of money we're making from the App Store, and the last thing we want to do is give that up. And so we're perfectly fine to get in the way of technology that would prevent us from getting our cuts. And that just kind of sucks, coming from the company that was known for innovation and, the pirate flag and all that stuff.
Oh man, I know, right? It's just, it's the natural cycles of a company to have this kind of issue. The thing that I would say is that while I'm sort of glad to see legislators calling attention to this issue, I am hesitant to think that legislation is necessarily the issue here. The issue is not, there has been a lot of discussion about the monopolies in big tech, about Section 230, about, how we should be regulating commerce and free speech on the web. And I would say that the answer is that we need regulation that's going to support Web3 innovation, and that the technology of Web3 will then provide the solutions to the issues of speech, to the issues of information flow, to the issues of monopolies even. Because
all those things that the laws are trying to protect us
solve
against.
Monopolies. But until the regulatory environment is safe enough for entrepreneurs to really build competitive products, we're going to continue to have this problem.
Yeah, I agree. So that's what we've got for the news for the week.
Web3 Weekly Wrap-up.
The Web3 Weekly Wrap-up. Hopefully next week we'll be back both with the robot and with amazing news about LK99 being real and
oh my gosh,
your hoverboards being due within a year or so. We will see. So in the meanwhile, you guys have a fantastic week, and we will see you online.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Oops.